Hey, Newlife Youth, this is Alex Stark here, pastor at Brisbane Newlife, and I just want to say a warm welcome to this breakout session. I'm so pumped to be with you for weekend. My hope and prayer is that this weekend you would grow in your knowledge and your experience of the love of Jesus, that he'd be your safe place, that he'd be your home, that he'd be the place where you feel most comfortable to be mostly who you are. Today I'm talking about doubt. There's a story I like to tell whenever I talk about doubt, so let me hit that first. When I was growing up, my parents would pack my lunchbox. Anyone out there have their parents pack their lunchbox for them? It's a sweet deal. Try and maximize it as much as you can. My parents would pack my lunch for me, and they'd always pack something sustainable like a sandwich, something healthy like a piece of fruit, and something sweet like a chocolate bar, or if I was lucky, some like crisps, you know what I'm saying? And I'd eat the sandwich, I'd eat the crisps, and I'd always leave the fruit because I had this idea about fruit that it wasn't as cool as all the other foods that my friends had in their lunch boxes. And this idea that I had about fruit led me to leave the fruit aside, leave it in my backpack, and slowly but surely it would decay. And the ironic thing is, when you'd find it when it was decayed, what was intended for health, a piece of fruit, if I ate it later, would have harmed me. And here's the point I like to make about this illustration, that the ideas I had about the fruit led me to not consume it well, and what was meant for my health could have led to my harm. And I think Christians have this idea about doubt that leads them to hide them, feel ashamed of them, and then they bury their doubts, and slowly but surely those doubts erode their faith. Why does this happen? Well, it happens because we've got the wrong idea about what doubts are. Doubts don't disqualify faith. Doubts don't mean you're not a Christian. Doubts are a normal part of any journey of trusting anything more deeply. So the question is not, do I have doubts to be a Christian? It's, how do I navigate my doubts? And I want to give you three things today from a story in the Gospel of Jesus to help you navigate your doubts well. And those three things are this. To navigate doubt well, you need to label your questions, you need to tether your faith, and you need to doubt your doubts. Label your questions, tether your faith, and you've got to doubt your doubts. And to make these points, I want to go to John 20. In John 20, it's the end of the Gospel of John. Jesus has lived his life, the guy we follow, right? He's lived his life, he's died his death, he's been resurrected into a new bodily life, and he's appeared to his disciples, basically to say, hey, by the way, I'm the guy I promised I'd be. I was dead now, I was dead once, but I'm raised to life again. I am who I told you I was. You can trust me, you can believe me, you can have faith in me. Jesus appears to, I think, 11 of the disciples, but one person was away at the time when Jesus appeared, and that guy's name is Thomas. And so when all the disciples, his mates, are reporting to Thomas that the guy who was dead, Jesus, has now been resurrected to new life, and they say this to Thomas, Thomas is like, you guys are crazy. Dead bodies don't just rise from the dead. This can't be true. And Thomas got nicknamed Doubting Thomas. And you get to John chapter 20, and you get to verse 24, and the story unfolds. Thomas gets to meet with Jesus and bring his question to him. Here's how the story goes. Verse 24 says, now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we've seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. Then Jesus told him, because you've seen me, you have believed, but blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. To navigate your doubt, the first thing you need to do is you need to label your question. What do I mean? Well, one of the things I've noticed whenever I talk with people who doubt God, whether he exists or whether he's good, is that they tend not to have a labeled question that makes that a reasonable thing to think. What do I mean? Often doubt can feel more like a cloud-like feeling than it is a articulated question. And when it's a cloud-like feeling and you haven't articulated it, here's what that means. It means you can't actually research the question. It means you can't actually ask a trusted friend the question. Let me illustrate what this would feel like. One of the things that, I was watching a Netflix series years ago called Mary Kondo's cleaning thing. And one of her key tips for cleaning up a garage or cleaning up your house is having places, boxes that you label to put different things in. And one of the key principles is that when you label something, it brings clarity and it helps you organize and it makes it manageable. When you label things, it brings clarity, helps you organize, and it makes it manageable. When I've experienced doubt, sometimes I just wake up in the morning and I'm like, why am I here again? What's life all about? Is God really real? Is Jesus who he said he was? And if that's more of a feeling than a labeled question, then here's what it does. It means I end up living subject to that feeling. And that's a bad place to be. What do? You label it. What's the question you've got? Maybe it's a question about God's goodness. Maybe you've gone through something hard, some pain, a trial. Maybe it's a question about God's goodness. If God is good and he's powerful, why would this suffering have happened in my life? Maybe it's an intellectual question about the reliability of the story of Jesus. Questions like, did Jesus really live? Did he really rise from the dead? Are the books which report his life actually reliable? There's a whole host of questions out there. And here's the thing, if you label it, if you label your question, you make it manageable. You actually make it researchable. Let me put it like this. You can't answer an unasked question. And here's what doubts are. Doubts are questions. They're questions about God, about the church, about the world. And so here's what I'd encourage you to do. Articulate your question. Label your question. Give language to it, because then you can manage it. You can actually go on a journey to finding out what the answer might be. And here's the thing, I guarantee you that you're not alone in whatever your question is. People have been following Jesus for 2,000 years. I've been following Jesus for more than 10 years. And sometimes I feel like I've discovered the one question that maybe no one in history has asked. It's not true. We're not that clever. There's a whole host of questions that have got a whole host of answers. And God's not hiding. God's not running away. He's not the guilty guy in the courtroom who's sweating because he's got some secret that, he doesn't want you to find out. No, God is open. Here's the point. If God is real and Jesus is true, then we should be able to ask questions about the reliability of our faith. And so label your doubt. Label your question. Second, you've got to tether your faith. It's probably just worth pointing out, actually, Thomas, the disciple, he labeled his question. He went up to Jesus and said, hey, by the way, unless I really see that you are the resurrected king, it's going to be a struggle, you know what I'm saying? And Jesus is like, cool, I accept that question. And Jesus meets Thomas where he's at. So that's the first point. Label your question. Second point is you've got to tether your faith. One of the cool things, I don't know if you know this, but when people are hiking up a mountain, say Mount Everest, that's literally the only mountain I know. I'm clearly not that sports savvy. But when you're hiking a mountain, one of the things that the sort of hike team does is they tether themselves to one another. There's a big piece of rope, and everyone's got a caliper on a harness. And the rope gets funneled through everyone's caliper. And so let's just say there's a team of 5 hikers. Everyone's tethered to one another. And the aim is that as they try and ascend the mountain to reach the peak, that if anyone's at danger of falling, they don't fall further than what the grip of the other 4 people can maintain. If you're hiking up a mountain and you're at risk of falling, the safest place to be is tethered to a community of people who themselves have grip. Thomas, in this story, he's not a lone ranger. He's one of the 12 disciples. And because he's one of the 12 disciples, he actually got to ask his question within a community that themselves were able to host Jesus later. And that's a beautiful picture of what it means to do life. You're not alone in your doubt, and you're not alone in your Christian walk. The goal of Christianity is to finish the race that Jesus has given us, to become like Jesus, to be with him as he is, to do what he did. And doubts are a typical, normal, human experience in that journey. And so one of the key ingredients you need in your experience of doubt It's not just the right answers. It's not just the right questions. It's a community of people who you know you can be honest with, that love you, and are there for the journey, and that when you fall and when you're struggling, you can say, I need help. And that's God's gift to you. So don't do it alone. You've got to tether your faith. And this youth group, you and your Christian friends, you need to be a community, not a community that relishes in their doubt and is just like, yeah, let's doubt everything, it's awesome. But are just honest about their doubts, because they're going to come up. They do come up, and it's okay. So tether your faith. And lastly, you've got to doubt your doubts. One thing I've come to realize is that doubts, you can't doubt something unless you have a deeper faith in something else. This morning I was in traffic and there was two ways for me to get home. One way was to take the toll road. The other way, and pay money, which, you know, who wants that? The other way was to just go through the city and dart around and try and make it home. I knew that if I took I was aiming to take the city route, but I started to doubt whether it would get me home in time. And so what did I do? I pivoted my faith from the route through the city into the toll road. When I started to doubt the speed that the city route would give me, it's not just that I doubted that, it's that I began to have faith in something else. And people do this all the time with God. Maybe you've got friends and they're not Christians. Maybe you've got friends and they disbelieve in God's existence. And maybe you yourself have struggled with doubt. Here's what I would say to you. Whenever you doubt something, you know, you've labeled your question, you've got an inquiry, and you want to reset. Whenever you doubt something about God, I want to encourage you, take a step back from that doubt and begin to ask, well, what am I beginning to have faith in that's not that? A great way to do this sort of exercise would be to say, look, I'm just really struggling to think that the records of Jesus' life, that they're reliable. What are you believing on a deeper level when you state that doubt? Well, you'd be believing on a deeper level that the people who wrote this themselves weren't reliable, that when they wrote, there wasn't a number of other eyewitnesses of the life of Jesus. And you start to assert all these things about the universe and all these things about history that are actually harder to believe in. It's harder to believe in some of the things that we come to have faith in on the back end of our doubts. And so why do I say all this? I say all this because when you start to doubt something, you've got to be honest about what it means that you're believing on a deeper level. And the question that begs is this: is there evidence for the new faith that you have? One of the things that I've come to realize in my own walk is that this world is beautiful. Like, you go look at the stars in the sky on a beautiful night. You go watch a sunrise by the beach on a stunning morning. And the question the beauty of this world begs is this an accident or is it on purpose? Now, if you say it's an accident, what you're saying is all the beauty, all the things that fill me with joy, all the hopes I have for the universe, everything that makes this world meaningful, it's actually not real. And you're saying that I have more faith that there's nothing behind this universe than that there is. But if you say, actually, I think there's intentionality here. I think there might be a creator. I think there might be a God who loves me and wants me to trace the beauty of the sunset up to the maker of the sun itself. What you're doing there is you're saying, I've actually got more reason to have faith in God than I do to have faith in the lack of God's existence. And that's the mental exercise that we each have to go through. And what's that going to take? It means you've got to doubt your doubts. And this is why Jesus could say to Thomas at the very end, after Jesus had given evidence of himself to Thomas that he was raised from the dead, Jesus could say, stop doubting and believe. So what would I say to you? I'd say to you, doubt your doubts. There is so much evidence out there for the existence of God. There is so much evidence out there for the reliability of the Gospels that tell the story of Jesus, that give us a picture of God and tell us who we're following. There's so much evidence out there. And here's the good news. If you label your question, if you tether your faith, and if you doubt your doubt, that when doubt comes, it won't rock you, it won't destroy you, it won't take you off course so you don't finish your race. It'll just be an opportunity for you to go deeper in community and grow deeper in love and deeper in trust with Jesus, the King we follow and serve. One quote I want to leave you with as I finish is a quote from a writer I deeply love, C.S. Lewis. He said, "I believe in Christianity like I believe that the sun has risen, not because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." C.S. Lewis was a man who said, I don't think there's enough evidence for the lack of God's existence. He says, I think there's enough evidence for the existence of God and the fact that God is who he said he was in Jesus Christ. And so here's my encouragement to you, New Life Youth. Press into Jesus. Don't let your doubts disqualify your faith. Let them be fuel for the journey as you grow deeper in trust and deeper in love with Jesus.